is here tonight with his team from Rice Fergus Miller, and they are here to give us an update on the community center. And I have to say, last Friday, Nick and I and Stephanie Andrews got to go over to the RFM office and actually touch and feel and see some of the materials that are going to be displayed tonight. So I can't wait for a meeting as we further refine the community center and share some of those things with you too. But tonight is really more of an update on the floor plan and designs. And so I got Dean and his team here. So Dean, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mayor Rob, and thank you to the City Council for having us tonight. Tonight we have myself, Dean Kelly. I'm a principal in charge and architect with Rice Fergus Miller. We also have our project architect and lead designer, Mike Wright, who will be going over some parts of the design as well. And then joining remotely on the Zoom call, we have our landscape architects from KPG, Paul Fusel and Holly Williams. So they'll be going over some of the site elements. So today, as the mayor mentioned, we want to update you on the progress with the project, show you where we are. Right now, we're about halfway through our current phase of work with design development. And we want to give you some updates on the overall site, how that's progressing, updates on the building design, how it's starting to look and feel, and what the components of are that are inside the building. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit about kind of some of the streetlight standards that we're proposing and a few options for you to consider. But before we dive into the actual drawings and all the design, I wanted to read to you our design statement, because we came up with this concept and we're using this to kind of frame everything that we look at. So our design concept is that the design overall explores the ideas of discovery and rediscovery. For visitors, the project should highlight all that Port Orchard has to offer, which is discovery. And for residents, the project should invite a lens through which to see their community in a whole new way, rediscovery. The shoreline is an integral part of the community's shared cultural heritage. However, for decades, it has been largely inaccessible to the general public. Its reclamation for recreation and public use should feel like a celebration of people and place. Just as the Port Orchard's population is diverse, so too are the intended uses of this facility. Whether visiting the library, attending a formal event, or just meeting friends for a cup of coffee, the design response should feel appropriate in terms of scale and overall aesthetic. The facility should provide a variety of space typologies, and one size does not fit all. Just as nature is layered and nuanced, so too is the design vocabulary employed. Nature is not static. It changes according to the time of day and the passing seasons, and the building and site design will also adopt this natural cadence, transforming from day to night. So those are some of the guiding principles that we've used as we've continued to refine the design, and we'll be referencing back to those as we kind of walk through the parts and pieces of the project. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Holly. Are you on the call, Holly? Paul Fusel would be the other one.
And I thought Leah's there too. Do you need her brought over?
I think she's just attending.
Okay.
Are you there, Holly?
She's talking, but we're not hearing her. It said across the top that she was talking.
Are there closed captions? I can't read them.
Okay.
There we are.
There we are. Got you now.
So Holly, take it away with the overall site design. We can hear you.
Hold on here, but Brandy, I think you've got the slide deck.
Yeah, thank you.
We haven't moved yet.
Yeah, I got the first one to change.
There's utility rates. There you go.
There we go.
Now we're there. Nope, too far.
Yep.
One back.
All right, backing you back up. There we go, Holly.
There we go. Now we're there.
Great, thank you. So we've moved this to ensure that we're supporting that goal of creating a destination space along the waterfront. We've looked at how all the spaces are connected. So looking at the CC in regards to the new bake location, the new lift station, Fort Street, the Orchard Plaza, and then the potential new development across Bay Street, and how those spaces support one another. So looking
Just real quick, Holly, if I can interject for just a moment, one thing I wanted to mention too, as part of our current scope of work, we did an assessment of the seawall that's currently there at Kitsap Bank. It was found that that seawall was not stable and needed to be demolished. So what you're seeing here on the slide is an idea that we can now, since we're not stuck with the existing location of that seawall, actually propose a new seawall as part of our shoreline restoration that would align with our main event space coming out of the community event center and give us more of that hardscape that will kind of facilitate big events. So kind of a silver lining that came out of that is we think as part of that shoreline restoration, we can do something that's both more ecologically friendly with the new design. As you're seeing the idea that there could be some glass blocks kind of similar to what they have at the Seattle waterfront. That would be kind of a more ecological approach to an overwater structure, but also the opportunity to realign that so that it kind of better works with the function that we see for the community event center.
And Dean sees that as a silver lining, which it is. The challenge to that is that funds for that design for the shoreline work in the budget. So no, we're still trying to figure out how to pay for that. And yeah, more to come on that one.
So it's very preliminary, but this location that you're seeing there, we think is a good opportunity for that.
Thank you for pointing that out. So, as mentioned, Dean's going to talk through some of the more architectural internal spaces. Before I hand it back off to him, I wanted to talk about two spaces, the kids and the teen portals that are part of the library space. But we've been coordinating on those areas to provide an indoor-outdoor experience with those portal spaces coming from the space in the library out onto the site. This is looking at some of the concepts for the kids space. We're providing a portal that is an inviting, we want to be an inviting, playful learning environment by using natural materials that the kids can sit on, climb on, providing pops of color, and of course taking inspiration from the surrounding waterfront environment and reflecting that in some of these elements. And then the next slide, looking at the teen space, so that indoor-outdoor space that's on the Bay Street side. Again, responding, the teen space responding specifically to their age group, enhancing their experience as they're visiting the library space. Teens typically like to be on the edge of things, to be able to see out, but not necessarily feel like they're on display. So we're providing some more modular furniture. They can create a space to hang out or create a comfortable space to hang out with friends or hang out by themselves and read a book. So they can really shape the space each time they use it and make it their own. So that's our goal and coordination for those two indoor-outdoor spaces. With that, I'm going to pass the next slide on to Dean.
Thank you, Holly. And if you want to join me, Mike. So Mike, if you want to kind of take us through some of the updates on the building. Largely, the floor plan and the building components are very similar to what we saw at our last update in April, but there are definitely some new details and refinements that we want to present here to the council.
Thanks, Dean. All right, I'll try to be quick here. We still have some other site stuff. So we got a revised survey back in May, and we knew we were expecting a little bit of a change on the Port Street side because there was a little bit of inconsistency between what had been surveyed and what was on the GIS website. So our actual property line shrank by about 15 feet on the southwest corner, which by itself was a bit of a heart stopper, but we were able to work with the civil engineer who is designing the reroute for the sewer line, which was the other boundary on the east side of the building. So we are able to actually move the building a little bit further northeast to contain it on the property and not change anything drastically to the form of the building. So that was the good news. It's more oriented towards the waterfront. We lose a little bit of that public space that we were hoping for along Bay Street because it shifted a little bit, which had an impact on the portal in the teen space. So we'll get to that and talk about how that design. We originally had intended to have it kind of move from inside the building just directly out onto Bay Street, but now that we're a lot closer, we're thinking we can kind of orient it east-west so that you come in along the side of the sidewalk. We'll see that in the renderings. All right. So Dean gave you an introduction to all of our design principles and concepts, and then how we actually implement those in the building. We identified 3 different ways that we want to do that. So portals and pop-outs. We have these portals on the outside of the building. We have pop-outs actually on the inside of the building, and this is areas where we want to bring attention to people to an interesting program element. You know, either it's an interesting library collection or a meeting space for people to enjoy. So there's something that notifies you inside the building, outside the building, that there's something important. And we'll look at the outside renderings where we have some archways that show you inside is a space it's worthy of discovery. Another way is filtered light. And so we're kind of drawing inspiration from nature, from the nearshore environment of light that changes throughout the day. So we're going to rely on, in the design, sunlight mostly. And in some cases, we're going to use some artificial light in creating shadow patterns, but in a way that changes the face and the makeup of the building as the day progresses, as Dean was talking about. And then framed views. So views out to the water, views to Bay Street. You know, there's areas where we're just going to bring people's attention to the view. Part of the portal inspiration is this idea of early morning, foggy, diffuse light on the water. We wanted to have the feeling that when you're in the portals on the 2 sides of the building, of being kind of enveloped in some side of colored light. You have some sense of privacy. Things are diffuse, and so we were trying to find a material that would give us that characteristic. And we looked at vernacular buildings. So we have these boat sheds out here which is like corrugated fiberglass. It's a pretty prosaic material, but there's other projects that have used colored polycarbonate, which in a lot of these cases is giving us exactly what we want. And we're still working on developing the material concept for these, but I think that's the overall look that we're going for. The ability to see some activity, but it's intriguing, and when you're in there, you don't feel like you're on display or in the street. You feel a little bit protected, but it also gives the public passing by a little glimpse of what's going on.
And Mike, if I may, we saw examples. It's not your corrugated, plastic
Yes.
panels. This is it's kind of honeycombed. It's much more durable than that, and we're still researching that. But that example in the top left corner where it's,
that was the inspiration. It stopped at that, and then we went towards the images on the bottom there that are a little bit more in keeping with what we're thinking.
So we should have a red X through it on our sheets.
Yes. All right, so here's the floor plan. I can kind of bring you guys through it pretty quickly. It hasn't changed a whole lot since our last update. You can still see the tenant space in the lower right. The library's office spaces have been pushed out towards the water. That was an update from last time. Then the portal, you can see the orientation of the portal on the teen side has the wall that is facing along Bay Street and entrances along the sides of it. The kids area portal is pretty much unchanged. It's expanded a little bit. Excuse me. It's expanded in size just because we didn't want to create any dark corners or anything like that. So it's an area that just takes full advantage of that space out there. So another area you can see down at the bottom, a little design move called the slice. And that is, we have on the outside of the building 2 large archways that are just a color difference in the material of the siding, and a large expanse of glass, which will give people who are coming along the trail on the waterfront side or along Bay Street a glimpse in to the activities that are taking place. So this is like the big flexible program area for the library, the pre-function area for the event space. So an area where there should be lots of fun activity that we want to show off to the world. Filtered light, so we have a hole in the floor to communicate events between the first and second floor, and that goes way up to a pop-up on the roof so that we have a very large, tall space that we want to put a skylight at the top, and then below the skylight will be some element that will create filtered light that changes the aspect of that space throughout the day. This is an area, where it's not an office space or anybody's workstation, so creating sharp contrast and color and excitement is totally appropriate, and it'll really just be a breathtaking space when you come in through the main entrance. Lastly, some framed views in some of these reading areas, and on the second floor, some of the meeting spaces. So in areas for you to inhabit the architecture, just pick up a book and sit in a windowsill like you probably remember doing as a kid. So we want to create areas for that. So on the second floor, this idea again of nooks. Up on the upper left there, we have an area where we have seating on a window that's right next to that slatted wall screen on the exterior. So actually looking out through that to the landscape, there's an opportunity there. And then along the hallway, you see these little blue boxes. We have pops of color at some of our meeting spaces. So an area where you want to go in, have a small, short meeting in these phone booth size meeting spaces where it could be kind of saturated in color. So going in there and it's an environment to be in. Again, large window spaces on the event side that look out to the water. And then some of these framed views out to Bay Street. So these kind of more intimate scale spaces next to these monumental scale spaces. So lots of opportunities for you to pick a space. Okay, hurry up along.
I think we could really kind of go down a rabbit hole here, but we wanted to show kind of the variety and flexibility of meeting spaces that we are looking to provide here on this slide. So primarily, the main function of the ground floor is the library space with the tenant space there along Bay Street. But when you get up onto to the second floor with the meeting and event spaces, we see that hosting kind of a wide variety of functions. So primarily, you see space A. That is the large event space where formal banquets could be held. You also see 2 Bs there. It can be subdivided down the middle to create kind of 2 medium to large scale spaces. And overall, the largest space, space A, could fit up to 130 people in kind of a banquet setting. We also have kind of the main atrium space there labeled as open. And we envision that wall that connects between those 2 spaces and that main atrium that Mike was just speaking to with the filtered light and that tall space that communicates from floor 1 and floor 2. There's a sliding glass partition wall that separates the banquet space from that, so that in certain events where it was appropriate, that space could just flow throughout. And in all of those areas, we're going to have spectacular views out to the waterfront, and they all will open out onto that big deck that we have right there. You kind of see the deck as it extends out with its 2 arms, and the main event space on the site plan is right below that, with, as I mentioned earlier, that the opportunity to extend that new overwater structure to kind of extend that space out. And then as you work your way down, we have kind of a smaller space there for labeled space C. We see this as kind of more of a boardroom type function. Could seat somewhere around 30 to 25 people. What was actually interesting as we continued to dig into this space, we had originally thought of this as maybe flexible tables, so that you could kind of move the tables out and host kind of more of a lecture type event there. But just with the shape of the space that we have, we actually are able to fit more capacity in that space as a kind of with a boardroom table down the center with chairs ringing that, chairs along both the walls, as opposed to having kind of just loose chairs there and somebody sitting at kind of a podium presenting. So we found that kind of interesting. It was the difference of about, in the presentation setting, we could get about 20 to 25 people. And in the conference room setting, we could do more 26 to 30. So that's leaning us to kind of lead more towards maybe it's a little less flexible and it's a little more purpose-built, more with kind of a big boardroom table. We're still thinking about ways that we could keep it flexible within that, but that was kind of one of the key things we wanted to mention tonight. Then in addition to that, we have kind of the small meeting room spaces labeled D on the plan. Those can host people, the smaller ones 4 to 6, kind of a small group. The larger ones, the larger one more in the 12 to 18 range. And then we have at the far end labeled space E, the co-working or light lab space. We're still working through ultimately who will control that space, but we see that as kind of a flexible co-working type space. And I'll quickly move through some of these images. So this is the view looking from Orchard Plaza and the main entry into the Community Event Center space. As you can see there, one of the updates from the last presentation is instead of Event Center, we now have Port Orchard wrapped around right here. Getting back to some of those concepts of the filtered light, you can see how the cutout creates kind of the shadow where you're seeing part of Orchard transmitted onto the building facade. So we see these slats as kind of a way that we're accomplishing that goal in the design. You'll also see kind of the big, large window just over to the left of kind of that main entry. That's the slice that Mike spoke to. That's the kind of way in terms of rediscovery, reconnecting back to the waterfront, that from Bay Street you can look all the way through the building and see that waterfront. And we think really exciting opportunities to see kind of that whole waterfront in a new light.
When we landed on Port Orchard, it just so happens that the Orchard side of the building faces the Orchard Plaza. So couldn't have planned it any better, but we did.
Yeah, and it fits there. Port fit much better than Event, so that was a nice kind of thing that happened as well.
Beautiful.
Going back to the Bay Street side, this was kind of one of the updates from our last presentation back in April, including that retail tenant space there on the corner, lots of transparency, still having the community sign represented up above. And we have this awning that wraps around, and you'll start to see that it actually connects into the teen portal. So we see this as an area where we could start to introduce that polycarbonate material that'll let light through and add a little bit of interest and color to the streetscape. But that could be the entire canopy material as it works its way around and ties into the portal. This is looking from the upper deck up on the second floor. During normal business hours, that main stairway that you saw right by the main entry would allow you to come up and occupy this deck, whether or not you were attending a function. It ties in both from the Orchard Street Plaza side, and you can see in the far edge of this image a stairway again kind of coming down, so that would tie into the waterfront trail. So as you're kind of going along that waterfront trail, the opportunity to take a detour, come up onto this deck, and start to see things in a whole new light, we think is a really compelling part of the design. So the portals, definitely want to spend a little bit of time here. This is the teen portal, and as Mike mentioned in kind of the previous renditions, we showed this kind of projecting straight out of the building and kind of focusing that space right onto Bay Street. With our site plan changes and the building becoming more parallel to Bay Street, we lost a lot of that room that we were looking to occupy with the teen portal. So the decision here was to take what was now kind of a longer and skinnier space and incorporate a new design here at the teen portal. So you see the polycarbonate wall shown there in green coming down. We actually think this is a nice refinement to the design. There was some concern about would the teens feel too on display? Is that really an appropriate place for them to be kind of occupying? So we think this gives a layer of privacy, but also the opportunity for some of the images that Holly showed in the site design for some of those indoor-outdoor seating elements to start to spill out of this space and really occupy kind of the areas that you're seeing. So we see this as kind of the main entry into the teen portal from the exterior. And again, creating this immersive experience that just provides a sense of fun. So the green polycarbonate going up the wall, wrapping over it as part of the canopy, and then being complemented with the flooring so that when you're in that space, it's really an immersive experience. And this is just the view from the other side looking back. We don't want people going right from kind of the retail space. We see this as a spill out space for that retail area into the teen portal. So we're thinking that there can be a combination of planting and seating elements that allow the teens in that space to look out and be part of the overall streetscape, but to still provide that sense of enclosure and really allow them to own and occupy the space. And then this is on the waterfront side. This is the kids area and some of kind of the event space off to the side. So what you're seeing there is kind of a blue polycarbonate wrapping up and over, and that really forms the kids space. There's this landscape area kind of front and center on the screen that provides some separation from the kids area and the main event space. And then looking at it from the other side, you can see is that kind of wall comes up and over, creating kind of, again, that immersive experience with the ground plane picking up the same hues of blue. You can see the event space off to the distance, so creating a bit of separation there between kind of the event space and the area for the kids. And because we don't have Bay Street right here and instead the waterfront, this portal goes straight out from the building, and really we want to take advantage of those views that will be available. In both cases, we see the portals as they connect to the library space on the ground floor being an operable wall system, like a nano wall, so that you could, on a nice day, the library, if they wanted to, could open that all the way up and have that space flow right from the inside to the outside. And with that, that was our building update. So last thing here to get through will be the proposed lighting standards that we've been looking at. So I'll turn this back over to Holly.
Thanks, Dean. Yeah, we're gonna switch gears just a little bit here, but wanted to get your eyes on this. So as part of the CEC site improvements, we'll be providing street frontage improvements along Bay Street directly in front of the building there. These improvements will include street lighting. It's our understanding that the existing street lighting that you see here on the left isn't meeting the lighting levels that a
we're not,
I know we were kind of, oh, okay.
I was just gonna say, we aren't looking for a decision tonight, but we are looking for direction probably at a future meeting to discuss these, because whatever we incorporate here at the community center, we need to bring through all of downtown. So we'd be adopting a new standard. So I think she's given us some good examples, and like I said, we don't have to decide anything tonight, but it's just food for thought.
All right.
Good, I think that's the end of our presentation.
Yep.
Do you guys, go ahead, Jay.
No, I just wanted to make a comment that, I feel like it's Christmas every time they come to present, because it keeps drilling down, and with nicer and nicer information. I like the fact that the open spaces and the lookout all the way through, I think, is a great way to look at this community center, and hats off. This is headed in the right direction. I've got no comments except thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Exciting.
Thank you. We're certainly excited about this as well.
I left Friday's meeting on a high. I was just, and Councilmember Chang?
I really like the design concepts of the pop-outs. I think those are exciting because they seem to be very intimate living room type feel in a public area. So I think that's really neat. One thing that just occurred to me while listening to the presentation tonight is we're talking about the teen portal and the kids portal. And I was thinking a little bit about Carolyn Powers, where she might say, well, what about seniors? Where do they go? I guess they could physically go into the teen area without the plantings. I mean, could they?
I think anybody could go in there. We're designing it, though, with look and feel for teens. Inside the library, though, we do have the space where the bookcases were in the northeast corner is the idea there. That's an adult space, adult reading space. So it's got bookcases and furniture intended as an adult space.
Yeah, so I mean, the portal's really the part of the KRL program for their teen and kids collections. That was why those are kind of specifically highlighted. But yes, we definitely see the space that's on the lower level plan that we have right there, just on the right side of the building, on the north edge closest to the stairway. That will be kind of this reading room, and you see a little bit of it there in that upper left image. We envision that with lots of built-ins, kind of very handsome, kind of wood shelving and built-ins along the wall, with some of these kind of built-in seating benches that frame some of those views out to the waterfront. But I think, the portal spaces could be for anyone. It's really, it's part of KRL's piece to program, but at the same time, we certainly don't think that this is like an off-limits type area. One of the concerns that was brought up previously in the design was that it felt too much like an entry, and it would be kind of not intuitive for visitors to the space. So we did think that kind of the shift in the orientation of that portal, the way we have it now, really helps to kind of make it more obvious that this is part of the building and part of that outdoor space, but this isn't really the front door where you kind of come in.
Councilmember Diener?
I wanted to say, good job. This is looking like it's going to be a great building, great addition, not just to the city, but to our immediate area, our region. And I look forward to seeing more. One question I have, maybe it's more for the mayor, is when it comes to some of the features that we've looked at the pop-outs, the filtered light, the frame views, the polycarbonate panels, what will be the decision or selection process for moving on those? Which ones we want to choose from? I mean, there's a huge menu here to choose from. And what is that process going to look like?
Right. Well, Friday we had a meeting with color palettes and which direction. Now, we had thoughts, but remember, we've got a library that's also. So one of our next steps is, okay, well, here's our thoughts. What do you guys think over at the library district? And then as this gets further refined, to bring, of course, back here for buy-in from you guys. And I think, and hopefully we aren't meeting again for another month, but I would hope is the street lights, we've got, I would hope more than a month or two to figure that out, so we could send it to maybe a work study and we can talk through the light standards, you know, and get some feedback from you guys there too. Because that's a big decision too. It's not just the community center.
Right.
We're gonna adopt a standard that informs, you know, what we do in all of our downtown in the future, so.
And I think, you know, we're narrowing down a bit of those options. I think at this point, we've got kind of the filtered light coming in different areas, whether that's the slats on the exterior, or the idea of the kind of patterning that could happen at that skylight through the main atrium space, and the framing the views is kind of something that we baked into the plan, and kind of where we want to capture those views, both to Bay Street and into the exterior. So really the thing that we're looking at now is really the material here for these portals. And the polycarbonate is one option that we're continuing to vet. This could be a colored glass product, so we're actually in the process of pulling together what all those options are, seeing what the cost, the durability, and kind of making sure we make the right decision on all those fronts.
Yeah, and that was one of our first concerns is on the poly, and we got to touch it the other day, is what's the lifespan of it? It's considerably less expensive than glass, and, you know, what happens to it with graffiti and,
Right.
and all those things. So
And-
we're looking at that
And
very.
as well, our budget is static, but construction costs are going up, and
Yeah.
so we've got to be mindful of just how much we can
Absolutely.
get away with.
Yeah, and another discussion we had Friday too is where the opportunities are for fundraising, you know, for selling bricks, to selling wood planks or whatever that, you know, so a menu of options were laid out there to us on Friday. And then I think we need to have some conversation with the Suquamish tribe too. I think there's an opportunity in our shoreline, possibly a significant art feature out front, and then we've got a very dramatic wall in the entryway that goes, you know, from floor to, you know, basically 2.5 stories up. That it calls for something dramatic in art, and we don't know what that is yet too.
Oh, question for, I guess, the mayor. So when will the existing bank building be vacated so work can begin on the community center?
Well, this process that we're doing, the bank's doing too, but not publicly.
Yeah, we don't see anything. All we see is an
Well,
empty
but
lot.
they're
When are
they're-
they moving? We can't start until they leave.
Correct. I would hope the next summer that they're got their plans in next year is our goal, but we don't control that. But they've got a lease that expires eventually, so you know, so in the next, I hope we're breaking ground 4 years from now on our community center, and they're out of our way. But you know, we're building a $15 million sewer treatment. Not treatment, but pump facility out front. That'll break ground in the spring, and I would hope sometime next year that the bank is breaking ground on their project too. But we haven't, you know, we've seen some concepts. Nick's had, his staff have had meetings with the bank too, so it's moving. But you know, they're not a public entity like we are, so they're holding their drawings close to the vest at this time.
All right.
Any other comments?
I think it looks great.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean and Mike, Polly. Appreciate you being here tonight.